Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and expert commercial real estate secrets podcast, where we believe the most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can grow your wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. And each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. We are streaming on Expert Commercial Real Estate Secrets Podcast YouTube channel, Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Realty YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook, and Capital Gains Tax Solution Facebook. I am super excited for our next guest. He is a serial entrepreneur who is always looking for ways to elevate himself and bring up others as well with him. He is the host of a podcast called Grind, Sell, Elevate, which he talks about leadership, personal development, business growth, and sales. He has a ton of experience starting new businesses and growing businesses to reach their full potential. And he's passionate about pushing himself to achieve high-end results through constant learning, discipline, and helping others. Please give a warm welcome to Tyzer Evans. Hey, Tyzer, how you doing?
Good, Pierce. Thanks so much for the warm introduction.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, Tyzer, cool name, by the way. We were
Thank
talking
you.
a little bit before the podcast, and apparently you just got it from your dad. Because why don't you tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, so I always joke that I grew up in Northern California, and in the land of hippies, and my dad was a product of the '60s, so they were looking for a name kind of based loosely around Ty, and came up with Tyzer. So not a great story, but yeah, it's been a cool name. It's one that people, if they like me or hate me, they always remember either way. So got to be
Hey, ain't that
careful.
the truth? Ain't that the truth? So, speaking about where you grew up, why don't you dive into a little bit about your background and kind of explain how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I've been a bit nomadic, but I grew up in Sonoma County, so wine country. My family's from San Francisco, Sonoma, Napa area, and then I came from a town of about, geez, when I was growing up, there was about maybe 5,500, 6,000 people. We had 3 stoplights. So I turned 18, graduated high school, moved to San Diego, and spent about 15 years in Southern California. Spent some time in Atlanta, and now I'm out here in the great state of Texas in Houston, doing a bunch of different things. So it's been a fun ride.
Awesome. And so I believe before we get into all of the meat of this, I believe that everyone has been given some gifts and or some strengths. I call them spiritual gifts. You can call them whatever you want. But what are 2 or 3 of your special talents or special spiritual gifts that you've been given or blessed with that you've used to really bring you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I think number one, I realized at an early age that I was a really effective listener. I don't ever have the tendency to jump in or give my 2 cents. I really am a curious person by nature. So when I got into sales, I really listened at that 80-20 or 70-30, wherever you want to mark it. But I just kind of came naturally to me. A lot of people have always told me that I'm naturally easy to talk to. And maybe that's because I grew up in a place that's pretty objective, and there's not a lot of judgment on who you are or what you do or where you come from. Um, and then, lastly, I think that one of my key strengths is I'm hyper competitive. So it's always helped me in a sales environment where I can listen well. I can explain things in a simple manner that are complicated. I think I'm easy to talk to, but I'm also wildly competitive.
So let's dive into that competitive nature a little bit. How do you feel like? Did you cultivate that growing up, or was it just natural? And like, dive into that a little bit.
I think that probably a lot of that came from my dad. I got put into my first year playing baseball. I was 4. He lied to the little league team and told them I was 5, so I could start playing sports. So I started playing soccer and baseball pretty early. And then always, in high school, I was a triathlete scholar. So I just kind of always had this natural proclivity to play sports and team sports. And I think that helped from a motivational perspective early on. In high school, I got involved in speech and debate too. I got to compete at the state and national level, which was pretty cool. So I think that part of it was kind of pushed on me, but I think that I also very early on, and I've talked before, especially was with basketball. So I was naturally good at baseball, pretty good football player, terrible at basketball. Um, but I loved it the most. It was the sport that I like dreamed about. I loved, and so between fifth and sixth grade, I don't know what I just said, I'm going to be the best basketball player on the basketball team next year, and so I spent all summer playing basketball 7 days a week, anywhere from really 4 to 8 hours a day, and I not only did I start, I became exceptionally good where I got brought up a grade. I started playing with the seventh graders. And so it was the first thing in my life where I saw that hard work and dedication pays off. And so since that time, I grew up lower middle class, but it correlated with me. If I just outwork everybody, there's a lot to be said for that, then I can success.
That's an awesome story. You straight up MJ'd him.
Right. It's pretty much, I never got to that status, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I became all league in high school, and I had some opportunities to play at some small colleges and stuff like that. But basketball was that first thing that showed me that, it doesn't matter where you started. It just matters how much you put into.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story. Brett, the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, is a big time basketball player, played in high school and college, and um, just loves the sport. So he would absolutely love that story that, basketball was the kind of the catalyst for you learning that super critical lesson of basically like how hard work and basically discipline pay off. And if you outwork everybody, like you can supersede those who have talent. And so
Mhm.
that's an amazing story. Um, so let's dive into what you're doing now, because we were talking behind the scenes a little bit, and you were kind of talking about your podcast a little bit and just the premise of it. Dive into that a little bit for the listeners to, what is it are you doing? What's your goal? What's your mission? What's the purpose?
Yeah. So, the purpose was very altruistic from the start. Um, I've been in sales a long time. It was, I don't know. I didn't have any real direction in college. And in college, I started working in a surf shop, and I started winning some, I was in San Diego. I started winning some awards at, 21, 22 for being a top salesperson. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll give this a go when I get done with college. And so I've never really looked back. And what I found was most salespeople are terrible. I mean, majority and 95% of salespeople are absolutely atrocious. And it's really no fault of their own. It's just typically when we graduate high school or college, for most of us, we stop learning. And so I really took it upon myself to master that craft. I want to, again, being competitive, I want to be the best at what I was doing. And I saw a lot of my peers not get promotions that I got, or not get different job opportunities like I got. I mentioned to you, I've kind of moved all over the country, and that's because of different great opportunities I've gotten through sales. And, I just said, oh, how can I help people on a massive scale? Because I was already mentoring people that I worked with. I'd been in, I'd led several sales teams. And so 3.5 years ago, I just said, well, I just want to, whatever little bit of knowledge I have on how to be successful in sales, I want to be able to give to people in a way to be able to help them. So if it's getting around the gatekeeper, or how to ask better questions, or how to have better effective listening, or just how to handle rejection, right? And so I just kind of started there with just like, hey, let me just hop on and do 5-10 minutes of giving people different types of sales tips. And then it just kind of morphed from there, where I grew a pretty substantial audience. And then people said, hey, I love what you're doing. Can I come on and give my 2 cents? And being that I'm in sales, I already like talking to people, and I'm already curious by nature. And then so I just said, well, let me bring on other people. I'm sure people are sick of hearing my voice. Let me bring on people that are experts in their fields, whether it's marketing, whether it's optimization. I've had,
Yep.
doctors on that help you with health and wellness, and or sales experts. And so that's kind of the evolution of Grind to Elevate.
Nice. So basically, it started off as you were balling, and then you started trying to help others, and it grew, and you developed a following, and from there you just like, I have something.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm 3.5 years in now. Um, and so it's been a fun ride, and I've made some beautiful connections, and I've,
Of course.
it's been cool to, I don't know how many countries I've hit now, probably close to 100 or over 100. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's just one of those things. It's a true passion project. My wife bangs on me all the time. Why don't I monetize it? And I'm like, that's not what it's about. For me, it's just
Yeah.
about giving what I have. And I just have fun with it.
Well, also too, like with like to that point, right? Like, why don't you monetize it? Like, there's so much value that you derive from just the connections and stuff that you meet, like on these podcasts. I'm sure it's elevated, your actual sales game,
Mhm.
and I'm sure it's, broadened your network to where you might not even see like all of the fruit of the labor that you've put in already. I mean, deals might be coming down the pipeline in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years that you never would have had you not done something like a podcast. I think that's the power of something like these podcasts. It's just the network effect that you get with it. Um, and so like you probably monetize more than you realize. Um,
Oh, yeah.
you
I mean,
probably
just
you
yeah,
probably realize it.
100%. Like I had Tony Hughes on the other 2 weeks ago, and if people don't know Tony Hughes, he's Australian, but he's the most read B2B LinkedIn author in the world. And so he just released a new book called Tech Powered Sales. And so we spent an hour talking about where sales is going. He thinks 30% of salespeople will be wiped out in like the next 5 years due to automation. And he has, he was thinking at such a higher level than me. I was sitting
Yeah.
there and like I don't feel like I get schooled often in sales because I read
Right.
ferociously. I have another. We can talk about another podcast where I read a book a week, and that's what that podcast is based on. And so I just was sitting in this interview going, shit, I don't really know that much compared to this guy. It was just like I was getting schooled in the moment, which was
Yeah.
beautiful
Of
because I was learning as we went.
course. And that's the other thing too is I love that mindset that you have. It's not an ego thing at that point, right? It's like,
Oh
hey, this
no.
guy knows something I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like if I can learn that, like I'm just gonna be that much better when we're done with this conversation. So
100%.
that's phenomenal. I love that. I love that mind. I can't tell you how many people that we get into. So one of the things that we sell and position is a new tax deferral strategy. It's not new, but it's new to a lot of people who don't know. And I'm in the Southern California coastal luxury market where these guys are making hundreds of millions, sometimes billions. Like they know their stuff, right? They're on their game. They've got it figured out. And I'm like some 31-year-old punk who's coming in there like, hey man, like I know a tax deferral strategy that's way better than anything that you've ever heard of, and your whole team doesn't know about it. You should listen to me. And they're like, no, like who are you? Like why would I listen to you, right? And so it's that ego that I think really, kind of hinders people. And you see it all throughout.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll dive into it, but I'm sure you've seen it just like destroy companies with like poor leadership because of the
Oh,
ego,
yeah.
or just people who aren't humble enough to just listen to something. I think you're absolutely right. That's a key trait. Um, you know, uh, of any company is that humility and that humbleness. So, um, with that, why don't you dive into a little bit about that new company that you're starting, that you kind of mentioned?
Oh yeah. So started a new company that it's pretty mature now, very development stages. It'll be launched in April, but it's called Alchemy Cast. And we're just looking for a better way for podcast hosts and guests to connect with one another. Being a podcast host, I get asked very frequently on a daily basis that people can join the podcast, and a bunch of different cool platforms out there to link people, but they become a bit spammy. So we're just trying to solve how to make that a bit more efficient, more for the podcast host, because obviously people want to be guests on people that have a large platform to be able to help push their product, good, or service, or their knowledge, or whatever it is. And so I just said, look at, right, always identify where's there's a problem. Don't need to reinvent the wheel. So take a concept that already exists, but how you improve it or make it better or alter it a little bit. So that's kind of what we're doing. So excited to be doing that with my buddy Kevin. So very excited for that to launch in April.
Nice. And we were kind of talking a little bit backstage about it. You mentioned it was kind of like a Bumble
Yeah. So
service. Like,
what I liked about Bumble, right, is just because, let's face it, us guys, we don't have the best track record for dating apps of not
swipe,
spamming
swipe,
women.
swipe, swipe, swipe,
Yeah,
swipe.
exactly, right. It's like, if I do it enough, I'll land on one.
A
And
numbers game.
Exactly. And so that's kind of how it works, though, for some people who want to be a guest on shows. And that makes it very hard for podcast hosts to be able to filter appropriately
Right.
and to understand, like, does this person, one, are they really who they say they are? Two, would they be a good fit for my show? Three, do they sound great? Are they intelligent? Are they well spoken? Do they have the right equipment? So just trying to solve for some of those needs to put a bit more control in the podcast host corner than in the guest corner.
Nice. So then the podcast hosts will be the ones who actually like instigate the conversation if you guys both match. Like, okay,
Exactly.
hey,
Yep.
so all right, cool. I got the power of this one. So
yep.
Nice. I love it. That's a
it.
brilliant idea. And you guys are in development. Are you guys
Mhm.
doing like seed funding? Like, are you just gonna launch it or how?
Yes.
Where's
No.
the
So me and my buddy are paying for it. So I'm all the businesses I've ran so far, and even like the one my wife started last year. I try not to take money if I don't need it. Very
Yeah.
much like that Sarah Blakely mentality, that if I can bootstrap it and use my own cash where I'm not in debt, I'm going to do that until I absolutely need it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where we're starting.
Cool. So let me ask you something, because I'm seeing a trend here as a serial entrepreneur. I'm gonna press you a little bit, so I hope that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So I get this problem too. Like, I constantly am like, something shiny pops up and I'm like, oh, hey, like, what's that? Oh, hey, this crypto NFT is selling for, $200,000. Like, can I hire a Fiverr guy and he make me an NFT? Like,
Right.
is that something? But I find like shiny objects are distracting. And as someone who has started, a bunch of business and honestly, like, I've been successful in some and I've failed a lot of them, I think that's part of the journey, but how do you stay focused on what's important without sacrificing, potential opportunities?
Well, that's a great question. It's a hard question to answer. For me, one, I just think on a day-to-day basis to have a really clear and defined discipline schedule. So I was privileged enough to have met Damon John about 3 years ago, and I asked him kind of the same type of question. I'm just like, man, you're a father, like you're running multiple businesses, you got Shark Tank, you're flying all over the country. Like, how do you get it all done? And he just looked at me. He said, I make every second count of the day. There's not a wasted second of my day. And I really took it to heart. And so just like, well, if I'm just, I love doing different things. It drives my wife nuts because I spread myself all over the place.
Right.
And I just tell him, like, well, I just have fun doing it all. And so, to be a father, because we've got 2 boys that are 5 and 7, we've got 3 dogs who like to travel.
Yep.
We're doing a bunch of different things. And so it's just to make every moment count and to have a clear vision of, like, when I start something, it's starting with more of the end in mind. So it gives you a better infrastructure of how to build a business, or when you want to exit the business, why you're starting it, or how it feeds into a passion project. You look at different verticals, look at the things you're already good at. Like, I'm doing a podcasting company because I podcast, right? So I know
Right.
there'll be synergy there with me connecting with people like you that are podcast hosts. Be peers.
Right.
Hey, do you want to come join the platform? So look at that. So that makes it easier to do business. I'm already in sales, and I do sales consulting. All those things that they kind of go together, but really having a very clear mission of what I want to do every day. And then, to your point, if something's not working out and I don't feel like it's either going to generate the income I want or I lose passion, I just cut it loose. Life's too short to keep kicking the tires on something you're not having fun with. So, I just cut it loose.
Gotcha. So, so do you have any practical advice? How would you say you schedule out your days? Like, is there anything in particular you use, or dive into that a little bit? Some practical stuff.
Yes. So for me, I think it has your day. is reiterate or goes the way you start your day. Like how you start your morning is a reflection of how you live your life. And so for me, I'm up at 4:45. I usually go get some water. I get hydrated. So it sounds, a lot of people talk about this type of stuff now, but I read Rod's book, Miracle Morning, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And I really was like, okay, I can get to the next level by applying this type of strategy. And I have, and I have taken my life to the next level by applying it. So I start with meditation, then I go into Wim Hof breathing, because the most important time I need to spend with
Wim
myself every day
Hof.
is with me. Yeah,
Wim
doing my
Hof,
breath
man.
holds. Yeah, he's a savage.
Dude is a
Um,
nut.
yeah, it totally is. And I'm down with doing his breathing app. I do the cold showers every day, but then I go into doing a visualization practice. I always see where I want to be, right? Because the mind can't distinguish the difference between reality and what you're thinking. So visualizing, I got that. I'm in Arte Syndicate, so I get to be on calls with Ed and Andy Frisella 3 times a month, and Ed talks a lot about that. Is visualization is a huge practice. And then I
Yeah.
go to the gym usually about 6:30, and I work out for about 45 minutes to an hour. So I come home, shower, take my son to school. We chat about his day, what he's going to accomplish, and then I come home and then I write down my power list. My power list are my non-negotiables. And I kind of start to look through my everything calendar. That should be obvious, but my calendar. So then I write kind of my calendar, my day out underneath my power list, and then my power list, my non-negotiables, things that if I accomplish today will move me forward tomorrow. So usually my power list is 3 to 5 items, action items that I usually try to get done by noon. So if my day goes sideways after in the afternoon, then I know that I've already accomplished things that are moving me forward in the future. If that's working on deals, or whatever it is, having meetings. So that's just kind of how I structure it. A pretty detailed schedule, which can be challenging. My wife's all over with her business, but I
Yeah.
do a pretty fair job of sticking to it.
Well, it sounds like you maintain a really strict discipline.
Yes, 7 days a week. I wake up early. And then every night it's kind of I wasn't a huge proponent, but a lot of people say start to plan your day, start to visualize your day the next day before you go to bed, have some gratitude before you go to bed. And I usually read. I'm a huge believer of shutting off your phone. We don't have cable. And I told you, the other podcast, I got to read a book a week. So you read for about 45 minutes every night before you go to bed, and something that's motivational or powerful, again, to help
Yeah.
me the way I end my day is just as important how I start.
Yeah. No, definitely. All great leadership tips there as well. You're leading yourself so you can lead others, right? You're doing
Yeah.
stuff that you're not asking other people to do without doing it yourself. Um,
Yeah.
it goes back. That's some really powerful stuff. So, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So let's get into the lightning round. So what is your favorite book?
Ishmael by Daniel Quinn.
I have not read that one. What's that about?
It's about takers and givers. So it goes through and starts with the agricultural revolution that happened 10,000 years ago. And it really goes into a deep dive into how it's a fiction book, but it goes into, it's very accurate, how somehow we think that the universe revolves around us, and more
Yeah.
specifically, how the community that we live in, the ecosystem of the world that we live in, somehow was put for us, and so we've completely dismantled it to the point, where we'll probably extinct ourselves. But it was a book I read at 16, and it was
Yeah.
one of those books that just shift my paradigm of how I conduct myself in the world, how I'm conscious of Mother Earth, my relationship with God, or whatever you want to call it, awareness, whatever consciousness. So it was a pivotal book at a young age that I've read a lot through my life.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. What's your favorite leadership quote?
That's a great question. Probably the one I have written on my board. Pay the price today so you can pay any price in the future.
Yeah. It's like Dave Ramsey's, drive what no one will drive today, so you can drive what no one will
Yeah, the
drive
Cardone
tomorrow.
quote though. So yeah, that's a Grant Cardone quote. So, yeah,
Is it?
he hates Dave Ramsey. Yeah.
Who's older? It's so funny. I love the banter between the two. Because you know what was funny is we actually we went through like Dave's class a little bit, and then I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. Like something was off.
Yeah.
And then Grant Cardone's like, you can't do what I do and do Dave Ramsey. He's like,
Yeah. No.
I was like,
No.
I was like, you're so right. Like, get out of here, Dave. Like, I like leverage and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. There is good debt.
There is good debt. Yeah, I'm totally with it. Like,
Yeah,
you just gotta be smart about it. So,
totally.
I don't know. If there's one thing that you could go back in time and tell your younger 20-year-old self, what would you do? What would you tell it?
Take more risk earlier on. It's going to be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
I came
It's
from a real
dude.
place of just like this fear and insecurity of where I was going to make money from financially. And so I thought I had to go this corporate route, and that's how I was going to climb this ladder. And as opposed to just realizing that everything I had to be successful was already inside of me.
Awesome. All right. And so what are you most curious about right now? What are you digging deep into?
I'm spreading myself pretty thin, so wondering how I'm going to manage all of it and still be
Yeah.
present for my family. That's something that's been really, really top of mind. That I'm really interested in doing a Spartan race, and I'm really
Nice.
interested in getting into more doing ice baths and like type of cold therapy type work.
Ice baths. I used
Yeah.
to get into
Oh, yeah.
those things after rugby, and I went to SDSU and played rugby there, and
Mhm.
they're cold, man. You got to have some discipline to stay in there.
Oh yeah, I went to
The
Cal State
mental.
San Marcos.
Oh
So
yeah.
I spent a lot of time down at SDSU. Having
Yeah,
fun.
it's a good spot. Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
that's old life.
yeah. Exactly.
There's a yeah. So okay. Two other things. When you releasing your product, how can people um get on that? Plug it.
Yeah. So when that releases in April, you
April.
follow my personal website, tyzerevans.com. I'm sure I'll have stuff on there. You can follow me on social. All my handles are just my name, Tyzer Evans, and it'll be blasted everywhere.
Okay, awesome. And how can listeners find you?
So, I mean, you can find me again, my website, tyzerevans.com. I'm probably most active on Instagram, which is just Tyzer Evans. Or you can find my podcast. I mean, literally on, I don't even know how many million
Apple
different
or whatever.
platforms. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on every platform out there. So you can find me anywhere there.
Awesome. Cool. Any closing remarks?
No, Pierce, the only thing yes. The one thing that I like to always close with is that whatever you're most fearful of, that thing inside you that's keeping you up at night, bottling up, making you feel like you're going to
Yeah.
explode, go do that. Go conquer that. Take the risk. I think the one thing that we've learned through COVID is that life is short, life is precious, and you only get one shot. So go max out on it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Get uncomfortable because no one
Yeah,
grows in the comfortability zone.
100%.
Ain't that the truth? Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe the most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options, not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy is the best way to grow your wealth. Please rate, review, and subscribe. And thanks again so much for listening, and we will see you on the